Has anyone ever asked you what the most important thing in youth is? Working hard for the future, strong friendships, or maybe a relationship. But for our protagonist, none of these things matter. They are just illusions. He reflects in his mind. To me, some interactions between people are incomprehensible. In other words, it's very hard to find people who understand each other. However, for me, just ignoring another person's desire, so-called love, loses its meaning. But with this letter in front of me, how am I supposed to handle this sudden affection? Oh, to me, receiving a confession is a pain in the neck. Whoa, dude, my boss, no, what do you mean, man? What do you mean? Oh no, we need to introduce him to the famous Nicholas Copernicus, right? For goodness sake. And when he arrived at the gymnasium, the place the letter described for him to go, he met a beautiful girl with pink hair named Wu Yaoyao, who was shocked to find our protagonist there. And he, being a coward, immediately wanted to change the subject, saying, if it's about the activity report, just put it in the student council, okay? And the protagonist was probably very good at communication because the girl got upset right away. And if he kept beating around the bush, she was going to hunt him down. With that, Labiole simply started to run away from the girl. But of course, the girl simply didn't let him go, grabbed him by the neck, and put him on her lap, and in a rather interesting position on the famous divine cushions. The girl simply declared herself to him and asked if he wanted to be her boyfriend. Our protagonist was shocked by this because he didn't know what to say, and in his mind, he began to reflect. I can't believe it. I can't believe I received a confession. Couldn't avoid it, accept it, but I still don't want to fall in love. Oh my god, if I refuse, I'm screwed. She's simply the champion of the archery club. If I run from her, it's dangerous, or I'll be hit by an arrow in the head. Hey, wow. Embarrassed by the silence, our protagonist asked, hey, do you want to be my girlfriend or not? But our protagonist only thought about one thing. I need to get out of here. However, I'm someone who has been through many battles. I'm stronger when it comes to running away. And putting his hand on her shoulder, he declared, Miss Yaoyao, I'm sorry, but I already have someone I like. And a few meters away, a girl with black hair said the same thing to our protagonist. And the guy who had confessed to this black-haired girl was very sad and apologized, but ended up being rejected, right? And Yaoyao, looking at that situation, asked our protagonist, so you're going to use the same excuse as that? And at that moment, Proto realized he was wrong. What were the chances of them saying the same thing at the same time and practically in the same place? But Yaoyao still insisted on asking what he would say now. Our protagonist, with a sad face, sincerely replied, I'm sorry, but I like someone very much. But our Yaoyao attacker, she pressed him again. So, tell me who you like. And if you don't tell me, I'll confess to you every day. I'll go to your house and confess. I'll go to your class to confess. I'll go to the student union office. So tell me, who is it? Crazy. This girl isn't in love. No, she's already deluded. She's already turned. She's crazy. No, she doesn't like him. She's already extremely in love. Crazy. She's already crazy. And Proto, who was already more shocked and everything, needed to come up with some excuse. And he declared that he liked Ning Yi, that black-haired girl who had just confessed nearby. And hearing this, Yaoyao responded, it's her? Then that's fine. And Proto was confused to understand her reaction. And she continued, I think you don't even know her, you don't even have a relationship with her, and moreover, she's leaving school next year. So, naturally, I'm not worried about this news at all. And that's why I'm here. And even if you don't like me now, I'll try to make you fall in love with me little by little in the future. And after making such a beautiful scene that many people would have already accepted her love declaration, she simply said she'd leave and come to meet him tomorrow morning. And our Labiole simply didn't understand anything. And when night fell, still at school, Proto was complaining to himself that the rejection would have been perfect, but it turned out Yaoyao confused everything and just made the situation worse. While he was complaining like an old man, a beautiful girl with white hair and red eyes was watching the whole situation. And this girl was the student council president, Tang Xian. And approaching him calmly with her cup of tea, she sat at the table and asked, what are you doing here at this hour? And Proto was startled because he had voluntarily stayed to take care of council matters. But in fact, who forced him to stay late was none other than her. And taking another sip of tea, she declared that Proto was a good person. And because of that, she would give him a reward. And then, she handed him her tea cup with a touch of lipstick on it. But our Proto said that his mother told him not to drink coffee before bed, so he preferred to avoid it. And upon hearing this, Tang Xian replied, oh really? Wow, I was so kind to make coffee for the vice president, but he didn't like it? Yes, my protagonist, she's very clever. And of course, after that, he had to accept her kindness. But Tang Xian continued, of course, vice president. Speaking of kindness, you'll surely return the favor, right? So, our protagonist understood what her strategy was. And looking at the table, where there were several envelopes, there was yet another love letter. And at that moment, Tang Xing approached our protagonist protagonist calmly, saying, "So, Vice President, can you tell me what you think about love?" And our protagonist, a master at reading the atmosphere, started picking up on everything around him. He began to wonder in his mind, does she know that Yao Yao sent me a love letter? Or maybe the love letter on the table was sent by her, and she realized I hadn't seen it, so she came to remind me. Tang Exan, comforting her colleagues, declared loudly to our protagonist, "Your doctor, you still haven't answered me. Vice President, what do you think of this love letter here?" But fate decided to help our protagonist, and suddenly someone knocked on the door, asking if President Tang Exan was there. Well, she was, but not entirely, as she was still squeezing her colleagues against our protagonist. However, she had another goal in mind, but for our protagonist, he was simply being suffocated by her. When the door opened, a boy holding a confession letter ended up seeing a scene that wasn't very pleasant to his eyes. In that situation, Prota understood what was happening and even tried to explain it was a misunderstanding, but the boy had already run off, and if things continued like this, it would probably lead to more misunderstandings. But Tang Exan simply said the problem was solved, and Prota simply didn't understand. She confidently declared, "Ha! If you received 25 love letters in a month, you'd understand me. And since the Vice President is the only boy I know, I can hold him responsible. Oh yes, I almost forgot. I want to ask you, how can a Vice President receive love letters? Is it too much to ask that you understand how I feel?" And Prota said, "Hey, calm down. Don't you care about my personal safety? These guys at school are coming after me." And upon hearing this, she simply declared that she would light incense for him. For those who don't understand, when you talk about lighting incense, it means the guy was going to be done for, like he was going to get condolences. Looking at her phone, she realized it was already too late, so she turned and faced our protagonist, who quickly went into defense mode and asked what she was going to do now. Taking our protagonist's hands, she began to say, "Why are you looking at me like that? In the Vice President's mind, am I a pervert? Besides, what could I possibly be planning?" I don't know what she was planning, but it was probably not very good since she asked our protagonist to cover his eyes. And of course, like any man, he tried to peek, opening his eyes a little because he was afraid of what might happen. But she told him to close his eyes because if he saw what was about to happen, things would get a little complicated. Then she began to tie her hair up and take off her school uniform. Naturally, seeing this, the protagonist turned around, completely embarrassed. "Dude, you're going from 0 to 100 way too fast here. Isn't this crazy?" Finally, she took off her skirt, which fell to the ground. This made our protagonist question what that noise was. Approaching him from behind, she asked what noise he was talking about. Maybe it was the noise he was expecting? Before he could think of a response, she simply pulled him by the collar. Now he could open his eyes, and in front of him was a scene that would leave any man in his position slack-jawed. With a sweet voice, she asked, "So what do you think? Does it look good?" And our protagonist, looking directly at the dress, declared that she looked beautiful but questioned why she had changed in the office, as someone could have seen her. She replied that she was actually in a hurry because she was going to have a special dinner at her house that night, and she didn't have time to go home and change. She hadn't actually changed in the office. She had put on the dress under her uniform since it didn't show much. Then she began to demonstrate how she had taken off her clothes, and the protagonist told her to stop, otherwise, it would raise the level of the manhwa too much. He then said, "If you have so much time to do these cute things, it means you're not in a hurry, right?" Suddenly, Tang Exan paused, remembering the button she had taken from our protagonist. She approached him in a somewhat peculiar way, saying he was very careless because, as a member of the student council, it wasn't right for him to be so careless and leave the button undone like that. Instead of the button that had supposedly fallen off, she placed a brooch with a leaf design on it. As she left, she said it was an extra reward for volunteering to work a little more. Prota was a bit shocked by this, and in reality, our dear friend Tang Exan's strategy wasn't simply to show our protagonist that love letter, but to mark her territory. But then comes the question, if that letter wasn't from the president, who was it from? When he opened the letter, it was actually an invitation for our protagonist to go to a certain cafe. This time, they put a name on the letter, and it was none other than Ning Yi. Seeing this name, our protagonist was shocked because she was the queen of the school. And would Cupid show us another confession today? Later that night, Prota went to meet Ning at the cafeteria, trembling as he said, "Miss Ning, you wanted to see me?" She replied, "Look, Yao Yao came to visit me today, but that's not the problem. She said you liked me." Then, out of nowhere, she started giving me a detailed explanation of your faults and the reasons why we can't be together. Wow, the girl is very bold. She wants to eliminate the competition. That's right. Ning asked if Prota was okay. He replied that he was, but said it wasn't what she was thinking. Ning just said, "Oh, I know it must be some random excuse for you to reject her, right?" Prota was shocked by how quickly she understood the situation. This was what he began to reflect on. Wow, that's the power of a smart and talented girl. I think I got it wrong. I'm not sure why someone like you would want to declare your feelings for me. Nearly smashing his face into the table, he made a reference, apologizing for using her as a shield. She kept saying, so, my colleague Baki, actually, I wanted to ask you something. Would you be willing to date me? Man, I don't understand anything anymore. The girl said she didn't like it, then she said she did, and even our protagonist didn't understand a thing and commented that it must be a joke, right? And she said it wasn't. She wanted to say that our protagonist should be her fake boyfriend. She continued explaining that Yao Yao declares her feelings for him and doesn't give up until she's rejected, and he doesn't know what to do, right? So they could simply pretend to be a couple, and that would be the best way to make other people give up. Still a bit confused, Proda asked, hey, if you were looking for someone to be your fake boyfriend, why didn't you go with the guy who had already confessed earlier? She responded, actually, my situation is a bit more complicated than yours. And of course, this is just a suggestion, so don't worry too much about it. Just think about it, and in the meantime, the day after tomorrow, I'll be here waiting for you. The next day was a beautiful morning, and the alarm clock rang. A girl turned off the alarm and started climbing onto our protagonist's bed, getting closer to him like a puppy. She began sniffing him and then was about to lick him. Our protagonist woke up completely startled and asked why she was dressed like that again and what she was doing there. She shouldn't have been so close to him since he had come home very late and hadn't taken a bath. The girl, dressed in a cat jacket, was our protagonist's sister. She said she didn't care whether he had taken a bath or not because he smelled really good. Okay, things started to get a little weird, folks. Hearing this, Proda simply got out of bed, saying he was going to brush his teeth, but she still clung to him. She followed him to the bathroom, not letting go of him for a moment. Later, at breakfast, she declared that breakfast was already served. Oh, right, I forgot to mention her name, which is Bai Lu. She asked if the breakfast was good, and our protagonist said it was the best scrambled egg he had ever eaten in his life. But changing the subject, he asked his sister, when you're at school, is it normal for people to confess to you? A little embarrassed, she commented that some people had indeed confessed to her. Proda quickly stood up and questioned, normally, how do you reject them? And if the other person doesn't give up even after you say no, what do you say? Even more embarrassed, she replied, I said I was dating, and if they didn't believe it, I showed a picture of my brother. Hold on, man, I'm telling you not to do that, ADM. Please, calm down, calm down, calm down. Hearing this from his sister, Proda asked if that was really the only way. A little later, on the other side of our protagonist's apartment, there was Yao Yao, wondering why our Proda hadn't come out yet. Speaking of which, he appeared suddenly at that moment and was shocked to see she had really come to his house. Faced with that situation, the only thing he could do was run because, judging by how she was dressed, she probably wanted to settle things by force. And that's practically what happened because she jumped on his back and grabbed his tie, nearly choking him. Meanwhile, our protagonist thought, what kind of romantic comedy has my life become? Later, on the city streets, our protagonist was running with Yao Yao. He was complaining that she was taking him to a small archery club event in the city and that he didn't need all this fuss. Yao Yao simply commented that she went through a lot to get that meeting between the two of them. Proda responded, calm down, this isn't a date. While running, Yao Yao saw someone she didn't want to see, a blonde guy with green eyes looking at her. Seeing him, she got grumpy and said, oh, him again. Looking at our protagonist, she had a brilliant idea. She started saying, darling, let's get out of here. It's too sunny here, so let's go backstage. The protagonist, very confused, whispered to her, asking what she wanted with that change of attitude. In a very cute way, she declared that if he didn't accompany her, she would use him as a target in the archery club. Hearing this, Proda acted under pressure, saying, oh, it's very hot out here. Let's go inside. I'm getting very hot here. However, the blonde guy had already understood what was going on. After saying goodbye to the girls around him, he approached our protagonist and asked if he was vice president by Kyo. He introduced himself as Lin Gu, the captain of the archery club at dance school. He added that Yao Yao had already talked about him before, but he didn't expect to find our protagonist there. Our Proda, looking up at him, began to wonder what that cocky vibe this guy had was all about. He continued, congratulations on bringing Yao Yao here, but since I invited her, I'll naturally take her back home after the meeting, so you don't need to worry about taking her home. Proda thought, wow, what a nice guy. There's something wrong with this. He was only here to see Yao Yao, wasn't he? Lin Gu continued, saying that the vice president's time was very valuable. Since Proda wasn't interested in the event, he could go home. Lin Gu assured him that he would stay by Yao Yao's side, so there was no need for the vice president to worry. At this moment, Proda declared, I think you misunderstood. I came here at the invitation of the school's student council, and it's not up to me who takes Yao Yao back to school. Oh, and of course, it's also not up to you, so I'm leaving. Looking at our protagonist, Lin Gu commented that Proda was very interesting but not very nice. Seeing this situation unfold, Yao Yao was very happy. Okay, then, then, I wonder what's so special about this protagonist that has so many girls chasing after him? So far, he hasn't done anything. We just know that the girls like him, but why? He must have done something really, really big, like saving one from an accident or giving another some medicine. Come on, girls aren't just in love, they're crazy about the guy. It's not possible. Time passed, and in the gymnasium, our grumpy young man was already complaining, asking how long the event would last. He was so slow that he ended up dropping Yao Yao's bag, revealing some suspicious books she had, like How to Care for My Boyfriend, How to Make Him Fall in Love with Me, and The Best Cruel Love Techniques. But a voice caught his attention. It was the girls in the other room complaining about Yao Yao. They said that just because she had a pretty face, she was arrogant and narcissistic. And who was in the middle of it? That's right, the annoying blonde guy, Lin Gu. He was saying they should forget it and pretend it was his fault. But the girls were totally indignant and said they couldn't ignore it. After all, she slapped him in the face. And looking all cute and innocent, he had the audacity to declare, No, it's okay. Don't go after her because of me. The girls were totally moved, saying he would protect them and make Yao Yao pay. Seeing all this, Prota smelled something fishy. At that moment, Yao Yao arrived, asking why he was standing in front of the door. Prota told her to be quiet because he was listening to some hot gossip. Yao Yao asked if he was just looking at other girls. Prota said, No, it's not that. I've already seen plenty of girls today, and I don't feel like seeing any more for the rest of the day. Yao Yao really liked this response and declared that Prota shouldn't look at other girls for the rest of the day. After all, he already had her. But since he had been a good boy today and taken a very nice attitude, he deserved a reward, didn't he? Today's reward would be him putting socks on a pretty girl. However, Prota wasn't very happy about this. Yao Yao got annoyed, saying her feet were very clean. She wasn't even wearing flip-flops. Prota replied, No, it's not that. It's just that I don't have that kind of fetish. It's like the sensitivity of a truck loader. Then she pointed her little arrow at him and asked, Are you ready to receive your reward? With that delicate way, there was no denying it, right? Blushing, he started putting her socks on, and when he finished, it was obvious he couldn't forget that it was a pleasure to put socks on one of the most beautiful girls in history. You know, right? Instead of receiving Cupid's arrow of love, he ended up receiving Cupid's arrow of pain. Changing the jealous atmosphere a bit, she was very grateful he had accompanied her today. Prota asked what her relationship with Lin Gu was. Hearing this, she became extremely happy and began to say, Oh, don't tell me you're jealous. To better understand the context, let's go back a day before the event. Yao Yao explained that Lin Gu was from another school, so they didn't talk. However, while they were setting up the stage for the event, he bumped into her on purpose, trying to get closer. That's when she simply slapped him in the face. She didn't know what he had done after that. However, some people were very irritated with her today at the event. Analyzing the situation, Prota started to get a bit worried, but at that moment, Yao Yao simply fell asleep on his shoulder. He even wondered if she was pretending to sleep, so he held her face and started moving closer to her lips. It looked like it was finally going to be the first kiss of the series, but it wasn't. He just took something and threw it on her bag. In the next moment, she pinned Prota against the wall. Extremely embarrassed and irritated, she declared, You really don't know anything about girls' hearts, do you? When you see a girl sleeping, you should take her home. After hearing this, Prota replied, Wow, what kind of teenage magazine is this now? Hearing this, she became even more embarrassed because Prota had seen the magazines in her bag. She called him an idiot and went to change. She told him to go home alone because she wasn't in a good mood. On his way back, he reflected, Despite Lin Gu lying to those girls, I should think about myself. At least I need to prevent these girls from causing trouble for Yao Yao. But why do I feel like there's still something wrong? No, something is definitely wrong. First, he did nothing in front of me, trying to make me leave. Then there was all this with those 3 girls. What is he really trying to do? Speaking of those 3 girls, they had already incriminated Yao Yao, questioning if she probably already knew what was going to happen, right? Yao Yao commented that she didn't know them from anywhere and asked what they wanted. At that moment, she got slapped in the face. The blonde girl then shouted, Now you know me, and this slap is payback from Mr. Lin. Hearing this, Yao Yao said, Oh, so it was him. It's true that trash likes to gather. The blonde girl grabbed her by the collar, questioning if she was really calling them trash. And Yao Yao confirmed it wasn't just them, but Lin Gu too. The blonde exploded with anger and slapped Yao Yao. But our hero arrived, wanting to end the whole situation. He even asked if she really liked being manipulated. Annoyed, she simply slapped the protagonist, saying it was because of Mr. Lin. Obviously, the protagonist was very upset and stared at her with deadly eyes. Just with that look, the girl was already trembling with fear. Meanwhile, Yao Yao quickly approached our protagonist, saying he had nothing to do there and should leave. The protagonist agreed with her, lifting her off the ground and saying, Yes, let's go together. Well, I don't know the previous reason why she fell in love, but now she really fell for him again. The blonde, still indignant, asked if the two thought they could just leave. Hearing this, Proda simply said, "Hey Lingu, it's time to show up, man. This is already hurting your image, and if you keep hiding, it will only get worse." And magically, who appears? The very troublemaker himself, Lingu. He even said, "What do you mean, Vice President? I didn't do anything. I was just passing by." But Proda didn't want to talk and simply punched Lingu in the face, knocking him to the ground. Confused, Proda continued, "That punch is payback, and next time you want to do something like this, think about the school message groups. Otherwise, I'll spread everything you did in those groups. After all, I have surveillance footage of what you did with Yao Yao yesterday, so think about that." Like a complete turnaround, Lingu immediately apologized, saying it wouldn't happen again. With that, our protagonist left. A while later, by a lake, Yao Yao offered a cold soda to our protagonist to put on his bruise. She asked how he knew she would be bullied by those girls and that Lingu would be there. Proda started explaining. First, he played the victim to attract the girls and have them take it out on you. Then, he would appear saving the damsel in distress, pretending to be a hero, the usual story. Hearing this, Yao Yao commented, so you're pretty smart, huh? Does that mean you're stealing the rescue hero spotlight from others?" Out of nowhere, Proda quickly approached her, which of course left her extremely surprised. She questioned what he was doing, and Proda replied, "Well, I thought you said the hero saved the damsel in distress. So, where's the girl I'm supposed to save?" With that, Yao Yao gave a great response to our protagonist. "Since you're my hero, you'll have to take responsibility for me, right? Man, these people are forward. They don't miss a beat, my brother. As they say, right? The only thing that loses time is a broken clock, right?" Another day, while washing the dishes at his house, our protagonist received a message from Yao Yao, asking why he ran away after everything. He found that moment very embarrassing, and if he didn't leave, he would definitely die. Out of nowhere, Bai Lu appeared behind our protagonist, asking if he was talking to a girl. Quicker than a ninja, he hid his phone, saying that it wasn't possible because he was just looking at a discount in an online store. But she didn't believe it. To end the protagonist's charade, another notification rang. From there, it was all discord. After managing to lose to his sister, she started looking at the phone. Internally, she was angry. Why? Because the protagonist's phone password wasn't her birthday. Just for that, she was going to teach him a lesson. She declared, "Brother, it's just a store ad. However, your phone is now in custody." She tried to do that thing where she put stuff between her breasts, but the phone just slipped right through. No more comments after that. She was indignant, and Proda tried to calm her down, saying they could do something, anything. That was his foot in the grave, as she asked if anything really meant anything. Sometime later, Proda was simply lying on his sister's lap, not understanding anything, and she was just grateful. Proda asked, "Are we really related as brother and sister? Why do you get excited about this kind of thing?" Bai Lu just responded, "You said we could do anything. Besides, it's very rewarding to help people clean their ears." Yes, it makes sense, right? Some people like cleaning others' ears, but it is very strange. When our protagonist looked up, he saw a scene that was not very recommended. He quickly got up and called for a break. Grabbing his phone, he turned the other way, saying he would play while she cleaned because otherwise he would get bored. Proda ended up with a problem in his head, as she wanted him to pay attention to her. Speaking of problems, his phone was full of notifications. One was Yao Yao complaining about him, and the other was Tang calling him for lunch. Seeing all this, Proda said he didn't want to go to school tomorrow. Bai Lu asked what he meant by that since the next day would be Saturday. Or maybe he had forgotten it was Saturday. If he forgot, it meant he would forget her performance tomorrow. Proda quickly corrected himself, saying he remembered, but had forgotten tomorrow was Saturday. He said he had something very important to do, so he wouldn't go to school tomorrow. A very inviting way. She asked again, "Will you see me tomorrow?" Almost instantly, Proda confirmed, and after that, she simply said she was going to sleep because she was very excited for tomorrow. Returning to his phone, the first conversation he opened was Tang's. She mentioned he probably hadn't read her messages because he forgot to charge his phone or misplaced it. Proda responded that he was just busy and asked what she wanted. She replied that tomorrow would be Saturday. Without giving her a chance to say more, he suggested that she had been working hard lately and should take a break tomorrow. He told her to go to bed, as he was also going to bed, and hoped to see her on Monday. However, Tang, being persistent, didn't stop there. She replied that she was grateful for his concern and, to appreciate his kindness, she would come to his house early in the morning to hang out with him, so he should rest well. Proda tried to understand what she meant by that, but what worried him most was if Bai Lu found out. If she saw this conversation, he would be in big trouble. The next morning, Proda was responding to his sister, as she had gone to the event first to rehearse. He had been smart, running to the bookstore first to ensure no disaster happened in front of his house. Or maybe he was a true genius genius. At that moment, someone offered him a coffee, which he accepted. As he began to appreciate the aroma, he wondered who had given him the coffee. Feeling a sense of familiarity, he knew who it was. Tang then said, "Good morning, my dear Vice President."